I found out on my 30th birthday that my own grandmother's last gift to me had been spent without my knowledge. Not a coin of it had ever touched my hands. And the people who spent it were sitting across the table from me, smiling, holding up their glasses to toast my future. My name is Naomi. I live in a small, rented house outside Albuquerque, the kind with a porch light that flickers if the wind blows too hard. I share it with my cat, Pepper, and most nights, with the quiet hum of my sewing machine. I make wedding dresses for a living, other women's happy endings, stitched one seam at a time, while I drank tea alone at midnight and told myself that was enough. I wasn't always alone, though. I had a family. A mother named Carol, a father named Walt, and a younger brother, Dean, who could do no wrong in their eyes. Dean was the golden one. Quarterback in high school, business degree paid for without question. A downtown condo that appeared the same year he turned 25 like it had grown out of the ground on its own. Me, I was the responsible one. That's the label they gave me, and for years I wore it like a badge instead of what it actually was, a cage. Responsible meant no one worried about me. Responsible meant no one offered. When my car broke down at 22, my mother said, "You're so capable, Naomi, you'll figure it out." When Dean's car broke down the same year, my father drove 2 states over to fix it himself. I told myself it didn't matter, that love doesn't always look like money. I believed that, mostly because believing it hurt less than the alternative. My grandmother, Ruth, was the one person who never made me feel like a burden. She smelled like lavender soap and old paperback novels. She used to sit with me on her back steps in summer, snapping green beans into a bowl, and she'd say things like, "You notice everything, Naomi. That's not a weakness. That's a gift people will try to take advantage of." I didn't understand her back then. I do now. She passed 3 years ago. At the funeral, my mother cried louder than anyone, which struck me as strange because Ruth and Carol had barely spoken in the last decade of her life. I didn't think much of it. Grief makes people strange. So there I was, 30 years old, sitting at a long table at a steakhouse my parents had picked for my birthday. The kind of place with low lighting and candles in red glass jars. Dean sat across from me with his fiancée, Brianna, who kept checking the size of the diamond on her finger like it might have changed in the last 5 minutes. My parents sat at the head of the table, looking proud of themselves for some reason I couldn't place. Then my father stood, glass in hand, and said the words that split my life into before and after. "To Naomi," he said, "who's finally going to do something with that beach house money." The table went quiet around me. Not because anyone gasped, because I didn't. "What beach house money?" I asked. My father's smile faltered for half a second, like a light flickering before it goes out completely. My mother's hand found his arm. "Your grandmother's property," she said carefully, "in Galveston. She left it to you in the will. We've been managing it. For you." I sat there with a forkful of food halfway to my mouth and felt something cold drop through my chest. I had never heard of a beach house. I had never heard of any property. I had spent the last 3 years thinking my grandmother left me nothing but a quilt and a recipe box. And I had been at peace with that, because things had never been about money between us. "I don't understand," I said. "I never got anything from Grandma's will except the quilt." Brianna laughed. A short, confused laugh. The kind people do when they think a joke is coming. Dean wasn't laughing. Dean was staring at his plate like it had suddenly become very interesting. "There's no beach house," I said again, slower this time, like saying it twice might change the answer. My mother's face did something I'd never seen it do before. It cracked, just slightly at the edges. "Sweetheart, we can talk about this another time." "No," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "We're talking about it now." I left before the cake came out. I don't remember walking to my car. I remember sitting in the driver's seat in the restaurant parking lot, hands on the wheel, not crying, just breathing, while neon signs blurred past the windshield of cars driving by. My phone buzzed. A text from Dean. "Don't make this a thing. Mom's stressed enough." I stared at that message for a long time. Don't make this a thing. As if discovering my own inheritance had been hidden from me for 3 years was an inconvenience I was creating instead of one I had just survived. I called my grandmother's old attorney the next morning. His name was Mr. Castellanos, a soft-spoken man with an office above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon. He remembered me. He pulled the file without me even having to ask twice. "Your grandmother left you the Galveston property outright," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. No conditions. It was meant to transfer to you within 6 months of her passing. It's been 3 years, I said. He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for someone to finally ask. Your parents petitioned to act as temporary trustees, citing your, and I'm quoting the filing here, financial instability and emotional volatility. I laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind that comes out when something is too painful to cry about yet. I run my own business. I've never missed a rent payment in my life. I know, Mr. Castellano said quietly. I read the petition and thought the same thing. Inside that folder were records I wasn't ready for. The property had been rented out for 3 years, generating steady income. Income that hadn't gone into any account with my name on it. Instead, it had funded renovations on my parents' house, a down payment on Dean's condo, half of Brianna's engagement ring. I sat in that office with the smell of cinnamon turning my stomach, and I understood, finally, fully, why I had always felt like I was running on empty while everyone around me seemed to float. It wasn't because I worked less hard, it was because I had been quietly funding a life I was never allowed to live. What are my options? I asked. Mr. Castellanos leaned back. You can demand full transfer of the property and an accounting of every dollar of rental income. If they refuse or stall, we file. Given what's in this folder, you'd very likely win, and quickly. Do it, I said, all of it. He nodded once, like he respected the decision more for how plainly I made it. The meeting happened 2 weeks later, in a small conference room above the bakery, sunlight slicing through half-closed blinds. I got there early. My hands weren't shaking the way I expected them to be. I'd cried plenty in those 2 weeks, alone, in my car, in the shower, where no one could see it, and ask me to be reasonable about it. By the time the meeting came, I had nothing left to cry with, just clarity, sharp and quiet. My parents walked in first. My mother had dressed carefully, the way she always did when she wanted to look like someone who couldn't possibly have done anything wrong. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Dean came in last, alone, no Brianna. That told me something too. Mr. Castellanos didn't waste time. He laid out the documents, rental statements, bank transfers, the renovation invoices for my parents' kitchen, paid 2 days after a rent deposit cleared. The down payment transfer to Dean's condo, made the same week Ruth's first rental check came in. This is a misunderstanding, my mother said, the same words people always reach for first, like they're a reflex. We were going to tell her eventually. Eventually, I repeated. It's been 3 years, Mom. We were protecting you, my father said. You've never been good with money. I've never had any money to be good with, I said, because you took it before I knew it existed. Dean finally spoke, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I didn't know it was your money. I thought it was just family money. Family money? I said slowly. Funny how it's only family money when it's leaving my hands. My mother's composure slipped further. You don't understand what it's like raising 2 children and never having enough. We did what we had to. You had enough, I said. You just decided I mattered less. The room went still in a way that wasn't comfortable for anyone but me. Mr. Castellano slid the final document across the table, the one transferring full ownership and demanding the rental income be repaid in structured installments, with interest or face legal action. My father reached for excuses one more time. This will destroy us financially. I looked at him, really looked, the way I used to look at him as a kid, waiting for him to notice me first. Then maybe you shouldn't have built your comfort on the one thing that was never yours to spend. I signed the papers. My hand didn't shake. My mother tried one more time on the way out, her voice cracking in a way I almost believed. Naomi, we're your family. You were, I said. I'm still figuring out what that means now. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood up, thanked Mr. Castellanos, and walked out into the parking lot where the sun was almost too bright to look at directly. The repayments started coming in slowly over the following months, smaller than what was owed but steady, like the first signs of a debt finally being paid in more ways than one. I used part of the money to fix the porch light that always flickered. I used the rest to put a down payment on a small studio space downtown, somewhere I could finally hang a sign with my own name on it, instead of working out of my spare bedroom. I flew to Galveston for the first time last spring. I stood on the back porch of a house I had never seen, Salt air thickened my lungs, and I understood, finally, what my grandmother had been trying to give me. Not just a property, not just money, a piece of ground that was undeniably, unconditionally mine, in a family where almost nothing ever had been. I don't talk to my parents much these days. Dean texts sometimes, short messages, like he's testing whether the door is still open even a little. I haven't decided yet how much I want it to be. What I know now is this: love that has to hide what it costs you isn't really love. It's a debt collected quietly, year after year, from the person too kind or too tired to ask where her own share went. I'm not bitter about the years I lost being the responsible one while everyone else got to be reckless on my behalf. I'm just done paying for a peace that was never mine to keep. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe.